Okay, so today I want to talk to you just a little bit about our future, choosing our future. We talk about a lot of things. Bob is helping me with some of the Revelation seminar that we are going to do here in this church, and we are pulling together a lot of information about what's going on in the world and how is it going to affect us. And I don't know how many of you realize, pay attention to these kinds of things, but we are really living in times unlike any before. And if I were just to take 60 seconds and give you a list of all of the crazy things that are going on in this world right now. I don't know how many of you are paying attention to the news. And the reason I say that, I don't mean to put down anybody, but I do think that in the United States, a lot of people just don't pay attention to what's going on in the world. We are kind of immersed in our own life, what did you call it yesterday? Matrix, right? We just see that matrix, the shopping and bills, and oftentimes we don't pay a lot of attention to what's going on in the world. I don't know if you realize that Russia and the United States are closer to war now than they have ever been during the Cold War. And that's a big statement to make. And I don't know how many of you realize that Israel right now is in a situation where there could be, for the first time since 1948, there could be another major war in the Middle East involving Israel and the surrounding countries. And I don't know how many of you realize this, that our financial system here in this country is probably closer to falling apart now than it ever did before in the history of the United States. And one of the reasons is simply because we are continuing to print trillions of dollars that are not backed up by anything. And countries, this next week, BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, China, South Africa, and what's the last one? India. They're putting together their own monetary bank and system that they want to replace the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, because I think they're all scared that this economy here is going to fall apart and they want to be able to continue trade and business and so on. There are so many things that are going on in this world. There are so many things that are going on in the world of religion, Catholicism and Protestantism. And I mean, it's just unreal, the things that are going on, and I hope that we will be able to put this seminar together very soon, not just for you, but also for our audience here in Denver, and that we would bring in some people to understand the times that we are living in. And the reason I'm making this introduction is because this sermon, this message today, this lesson, is about choosing your future. And some of you, when you're looking at everything, you may say, well, do we really have much of a future? Do we really have much of a future? Maybe Jesus is going to come in the next few years. Maybe we don't have all of this time ahead of us, 20 years or 30 years or whatever, But at the same time, I want us to be aware of the possibility of some major events taking in this world, but also we need to be prepared for life. Because we don't have a guarantee that Jesus will come tomorrow. And if he doesn't, and if this world does descend into chaos, that I think it will, what is your future going to look like? Today I want to talk and study a little bit about how we think. What does the Bible say about it? I believe that our thinking determines our future. And my computer wasn't working so good, so I'm going to use the same outline that you can have. I don't know if anybody needs the outline. If you do, raise your hand, and maybe we can have somebody in the back there pass them out to you. But choosing your future, I believe you can. I believe you can choose your future. Do you believe that your future is determined, that you cannot change it? The things that you do today And the way you think today can affect how your future is going to be tomorrow. That's a fact. That's just a fact. Proverbs 8:10 says this, choose my instruction instead of silver, knowledge rather than choice of gold. So this is what this sermon is about today, is about more knowledge, is about instruction of God. It's about applying those principles in our lives so that we would have good future. Proverbs 12:26 says, again, about choosing. You have the ability to choose. The righteous choose their friends carefully, but the way of the wicked leads them astray. Choosing your friends carefully can affect your future. Yes or no? Yes. I mean, wasn't there a case of a lady here in Colorado who was in a car when her boyfriend robbed a bank, and I think somebody got killed, and she was riding in the car. She claims that she was not even aware of what he was doing, and she's serving, I believe, a life sentence as an accessory to murder. Choosing your friends can determine what your future is going to be like. So the Bible talks a lot about choice and talks a lot about the future. Proverbs 24:14 talks about future, and it says, know also that wisdom is like honey for you. If you find it, then there is what? There is future, hope for you, and your hope will not be cut off. So if you choose the wisdom that the Bible has, that God has for you, then your future has hope. Is there anybody here who maybe feels a little bit hopeless at times? We do, right? We look at the world around us. I mean, I've talked, I'm not going to mention a name, but I talked to our church member right this morning, and she's here right now in this audience, and she says, you know, I may lose my job. And I've seen this happen all the time. So sometimes there comes a time when we become a little bit scared for our future, right? And we don't know what the future is bringing. But I also want to tell you that if you have wisdom in life, the wisdom that comes from the Bible and from God, then you can plan your future a little bit better. Now, what kind of future does God have for you? And I love this text, Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord, right? That's a wonderful text. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and future. So that's what God has in mind for you. He wants to give you a good future. But at the same time, you can sabotage your own future by doing things that are not right and by thinking the wrong way. And that's what I want to talk about today. Psalm 37:37. Consider the blameless, observe the upright. A future awaits those who seek peace. So, even if the whole world collapses and we have the huge time of trouble, even if that happens tomorrow, then this verse still applies to us. Consider the blameless, observe the upright. A future awaits those who seek peace. A future that God is bringing into this world of ours. So maybe we're not going to have this huge future on this planet, you know, in this particular system with sin and wars and all humanity. But I tell you, there is a future for those who seek peace and who live according to God's will, and that future is going to last for eternity. How does your thinking affect your future? And I want to talk to you. I'm giving you 10 things that a friend of mine sent me, and this is how people think, and how you think affects what your tomorrow is going to look like. Number one, there are some people who employ this all or nothing thinking. To them, everything is either black or it's white. There is no shades in between. And you may say, we live in a free country, and in America we have all kinds of choices. Well, let's talk about that for a second. And I'm using America because this is the context in which we're living. Let's talk about politics. How many choices you have when you go to vote? What did you say? Red and blue, right? The elephant and what's the other one? Donkey. So you got two choices. So it's either conservative or liberal. It's either a Democrat or a Republican. So we don't have a lot of choices in America when it comes to voting, right? And then, by the way, I think that as far as politics is concerned, it's only one choice anyways. Because they end up doing, the guy that you're going to elect tomorrow is going to be doing the same thing that the guy who was just in the office did. You know, there is really no big difference. So in politics, we only have two choices. It's always black or white. What about religion? Seventh-day Adventist, Catholic, evangelical Christian. And generally, it's my way is the right way, right? So in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, obviously, we say we have all the truth and nobody else knows anything, and they all need to convert to our faith in order to be saved. And the funny thing is, Catholics say the same thing. And Baptists, they say the same thing. I mean, even baptized some kids who came to a camp and they didn't even plan on being baptized. Mormons, they baptize the dead. You know, why? Because if you're not baptized in their faith, you're not going to heaven. So we tend to think as black and white. You know, all or nothing. This person is a bad person or they are a great person. We see this a lot nowadays with this illegal immigration. You know, people who are coming across the border illegally, they're bad. They're just bad. I mean, that's it. And that's how most of the people in the country see it. There is no gray areas. And the fact is that if you want to have a good future, you have to realize that there are a lot of gray areas. And we have to think out of the box. And we have to accept people for more than just black or white, religious or non-religious, Republican or Democrat. You have to open your mind to have a good future. Some of the best people that maybe you know have done maybe a bad thing in the past. Yes or no? All the time. We have that happen all the time. So you can't just have this all or nothing thinking. As soon as it was night, this is Acts 17, the believers sent Paul and Silas away to Berea. On arriving there, they went to the Jewish synagogue. Now the Berean Jews, they were Jews. And Paul was preaching what kind of message? Christianity, Jesus. So the Berean Jews were of more noble character than those in Thessalonica. Why? Because they received the message with great eagerness, and they did what? They examined the scripture every day to see if what Paul said was true. The Bible says that they were noble. Why? Because they were open-minded. Can you imagine you are a conservative Jew and you believe what you believe? You believe in Messiah. You believe in sacrificial system. You have Torah. You have Moses. You have a huge, thousands of year old history of faith. And you know who you are. You're not some pagan. You know who you are. You know your roots. You have a foundation. And here comes this guy, and he preaches this new theory to you, this new doctrine, this Jesus. I mean, most people would just shut it off, right? And most people did. Paul did not have a lot of luck with many of these Jewish synagogues. They just shut him off. They wanted to stone him. They wanted to kill him. They didn't want to hear this. But these guys, they said, okay, let me hear what you have to say, and I'm going to check everything that you're saying against the Bible, against the Old Testament scriptures. That's what they did. So, lesson number one, how you think today is going to affect your future tomorrow. If you're open-minded, if you're willing to study and to examine and to learn, you may learn something. I learn something all the time. I'm a pastor in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. I went through our educational system, and I went through, all of it. I did as much studies in the Seventh-day Adventist system as anyone could do. I couldn't take any more classes. Everything that we offered, I took. From the Ellen White to the history of the church, to the history of Seventh-day Adventism, exegetics, Greek, Hebrew, you name it, I've studied it. And to this day, you know what? I still like to read. And I still like to learn something new. And oftentimes, I'll find some fantastic materials from a Baptist preacher. Or even from a Catholic teacher or a preacher. Why? Because God doesn't only limit himself to Seventh-day Adventists. He tries to bring everybody into the heaven, right? So we need to be open-minded. Now, so the question on this first point is for yourself, what kind of a person are you? And I love to ask that question. What kind of a person are you? Are you somebody who has this all or nothing mentality and you don't want to hear anything else? Or are you somebody who is open-minded? And how is that going to affect your tomorrow? Number 2, overgeneralizing. And this is general conclusion based on a single incident. And I'm going to give you an example. A new neighbor moved into my neighborhood. And I think I mentioned, maybe I didn't, not too long ago. And I'm at home, 9 o'clock. I mentioned that, right? And I just want to relax. Just came out to the shower. And I want to relax. And I turn on the TV, want to watch a little bit of the corporate news, because that's all that's on TV. And all of a sudden, a lawnmower is going. This guy is mowing his lawn, 9 o'clock at night. It's getting darker. And my generalization was, this guy doesn't care for the neighbors. He doesn't respect us. I never met the guy. So I'm generalizing right away. He doesn't care for the neighbors, and he doesn't respect us in our quiet time. And this keeps going. And he's mowing, and then he's edging, and then it's 10 o'clock at night, and I'm looking out of the window, and he's still working out there, and it's total and complete darkness. You can't see where you're going. And I made a judgment. Yesterday, somebody rings a bell on my door, and it's this guy. And turns out to be a really nice guy. I'm talking to him. He says, we're going to have a little party at my house. I'd love you to come, and we start talking. And before I know it, I'm connecting with this person on a human level. And he's totally unlike what I generalized about him based on that one incident. And he inherited the house from his grandmother who died. And he really wants to keep it up, make it nice and clean. And, he's working hard all day long, so he comes home at night. So he's working at night because he wants it to be nice for him and his kids and his family. When you overgeneralize, you're not flexible. You limit your options. You eliminate people from your life. And the Bible gives us in 1 Corinthians 13, a remedy for overgeneralizing. And that remedy says, love is patient. If you love, you're not going to overgeneralize. You're going to be patient with another person. Right? He does not envy, he does not boast, he is not proud, he does not dishonor others. When you generalize, you're dishonoring another person. I'm hearing people saying, these illegals, they're bringing leprosy and disease from South America to this country. Oh my goodness. How much hate can we have in ourselves? Well, I'm thinking only a few years back. And every one of us, unless you're a pure American Indian, came from an immigrant background. Every single one of us. And when Italians came, everybody said they're going to destroy this country. And when Irish came, nobody wanted to give them a job. They actually had signs in New York City on storefronts saying, Irish don't need to apply. And now, we have people from South America, same thing. And I'm bringing this up not because I want to stir something up, but I'm saying we dishonor people when we label them. We dishonor people when we overgeneralize about them. And the Bible says it. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. I got angered that night when he was mowing grass. I got angry because I overgeneralized. Based on that one incident, to me, he was right away a bad person. But the Bible says you shouldn't get angry. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. This is describing somebody who is flexible. Be flexible in life. If you want to have a good future tomorrow, be flexible. People who overgeneralize, they lose friends quickly. Number 3, filtering out the positive. Now, how often has that happened to you? You're going through life, and all of a sudden, at your work, 9 things happen to you, and they're all great. Then one time you have a bad experience. And you filter out all of the good stuff, and you forget about it. And you're thinking about that one incident, one bad thing that has happened to you. And you start obsessing with it. And you start worrying about it. And instead of focusing on all of the positive stuff that has happened to you, now you're bogged down and you cannot move and you cannot have the future. Because you're just obsessing with negative stuff. The perfect story in the Bible is the story of the Israelites. And the next 3 or 4 points we are going to draw from this story, and this is a story when the Israelites were about to enter into the promised land, and before they went in there, they sent the spies. You remember the story? They sent 10 spies. So the 10 spies, they went in, and they looked over the land of Canaan, the promised land, and they checked everything out. They pretended maybe that they were traders or who knows what. They just went in to spy on the land. And they came back, and you know what they said? They said, this land is fantastic. This land has fruits and vegetables, and grapes are this big, and it's just plentiful, and it's just rivers and waters, and the best land that we have ever seen. And one of the men who was listening, he says, great, when do we attack? Let's go in and take it. Right? But the spies, instead of saying, yeah, let's go and take it, guess what they said? But the men who had gone up with this man who wanted to go in and attack, they said, we can't attack those people. They are stronger than we are. They filtered out all of the positive stuff. The land was good. The future was good. Waters, rivers. Plentiness, milk and honey. They filtered all of that out, and what did they focus on? They're stronger than we are. And they spread among the Israelites a bad report about the land they had explored. And they said, the land we explored devours those living in it. All the people we saw there are of great size. We saw the Nephilim there. These are the descendants of Anak, the giant. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them. They went into this land. The land was perfect. The future was good. You do that sometimes. You think about things that you can do in your life, and your future looks good, and there is tremendous potential, and then all of a sudden you filter all of that out and you start focusing on the negative. On that one negative thing. And once they did that, they discouraged the whole nation. They discouraged. To the point where God had to intervene in there and give them a kick in the butt so they would go again. That's what this does when we act this way. When we filter out the positive and only focus on the negative, we lose the desire to have the future. We just give up. Point number 4, mind reading. We assume without confirming. They assumed, these spies, they assumed right away that these people were stronger than them. What did they forget? What did they forget? Isn't it amazing to you when you think about that story? When you think about Israelites, who was before them in the daytime? In what form? And what about the nighttime? God was there in a pillar of fire. So now you tell me this. God, you are walking through the desert and you see the presence of God, the manifestation of God every single day and every single night. He's right there. And He feeds you. God fed them. He gave them manna to eat every day. And He defeated many foes for them. He performed many miracles for them. And they go into this land and they see these guys who are tall and big. And what they do? They get scared. They assume without confirming in their mind, we're not going to win. Sometimes somebody looks at you the wrong way and you assume they must be hating me. And you don't go and confirm. The man that's going to give us a presentation today for the health seminar, his name is Steve Charbonneau, and he is an expert on conflict resolution. And he told me, a year ago, 2 neighbors got into a fight. They get these conflict resolution guys, they get contracted by the cities and police departments and so on to deal with conflicts that are happening all over the cities. And he says to me, these 2 guys, they got into an argument over a barking dog, and it got so bad that one morning this neighbor went, knocked on the door. When the other one opened the door, he shot him with a shotgun, killed him on the spot. So he killed the man over the dog, and then he himself ended up in jail for the rest of his life. Why? Because he assumed that this guy disrespected him, that this guy hated him, right? Because he would allow his dog to bark all the time. And as you will learn today at 2 o'clock, if you stay, this is a conflict resolution seminar. It teaches you how to deal with conflict. He says this is what happens. People assume. They read somebody else's mind. And they make up their mind before. I told him about my story with my neighbor. And he says, that's a perfect example. You made up your mind that this guy was disrespectful. And you never confirmed it. And he says what we do, we come in, we sit down with people for an hour. We resolve 90% of all of the problems. When you start talking. Now these spies, they went in, they made up their mind, these people are stronger than us. They didn't confirm, they didn't go back to the Lord and say, Lord, this doesn't look like an even match. We think we're going to lose, what do you say? They didn't even ask for a confirmation from God. They just assumed. When we do that, our future is not going to be good. If they stayed, if God did not intervene at that point, what would have happened to the Israelites? They would have been scared to go across the Jordan. They would have died in the desert. They would have died in the desert. So your future depends on how you think today. Number 5, I can't pronounce this word. How do you pronounce it? Somebody. Daryl, you're a native-born American. Okay, catastrophe, right? Sometimes, we make things look worse than they really are. And this was a perfect example. They said, we look like grasshoppers to them. Well, I'm sure they were not looking like grasshoppers to them. They exaggerated. In other words, you get this bad situation and you start exaggerating the negative. Maybe you have had a setback in your finances and you're all of a sudden worried that you're going to go bankrupt. Maybe you had a fight with your wife and right away you think that she's going to ask for a divorce. Maybe you had a little argument with your boss, supervisor. And right away, maybe you get scared and you think, they're going to fire me. They're going to fire me. It's a human nature oftentimes to kind of exaggerate and to think that really, really bad things are going to happen to us. And I want to encourage you, if you have that kind of thinking, Satan likes to bring that into our lives too, and he likes to scare us. He likes to scare us. Things are not going to go good for you. And he was successful in scaring these people where they started thinking that these Canaanites were just going to destroy them. When in reality, they and you have God on your side. And just as he was stronger than all of those giants, he is stronger than your boss who doesn't like you. He is stronger than the failures that you have in communication with your loved one. He is stronger than the financial problems that you are maybe facing. God is stronger than any circumstance or any person, human or otherwise. He is, and he is on your side. And that's a reality that we should not be forgetting like they did. Because if you forget that, then your future is going to be dim and desperate and full of problems. Number 6, emotional reasoning. In other words, we all get emotional, right? And the emotions such as fear or anger, they can completely affect our outlook on life. You become scared, and all of a sudden you think everything is going down the hill. I'm never going to recover from this. That's emotional reasoning. And that's exactly what happened to them when they encountered those giants. They became emotional. I mean, can you imagine walking into this land and you see somebody 10 feet tall and they're not friendly? I mean, yeah, they got scared. So they allow their emotions to decide their actions. If you allow your emotions to decide your actions, you're going to screw up. And your future is not going to be good. So you got to control those emotions. I read a book one time from this CEO of a major multi-billion-dollar corporation. And in that book, there was one sentence that caught my eye. And he said, the things that people are afraid of, they never happen. And then, yet, so many people live in fear that something bad is going to happen to them. In other words, his point was sometimes you got to take risks. Sometimes you got to put these emotions of fear and anger, these destructive emotions away and just trust God that he's going to see you through. Because he's stronger than all of these circumstances. Number 7, labeling. And I mean, the Bible is very clear on that. Luke 6:37 says, do not judge and you will not be judged. Labeling is judging. When you label somebody, when you say they're dirty, or when you say they're bad, or when you say they are an idiot, you're labeling somebody. You're judging them. If you go through life that way, judging people and labeling people, if you're doing that today, what is your tomorrow going to look like? Those people don't want to be around you then. You're not giving them a chance. You're basically shortchanging yourself, your own future. And we all label, right? I label the Brazilian soccer team. I'm sorry, Erica. Erica is from Brazil, so I know that she was. Did you even watch the game? Be honest. See, that's girls for you. They don't care about soccer, But, I was watching that game, and they lost to Germany 7-1. in my head, I label them as the worst team that ever played a game of soccer. You know what I mean? And in fact, they're not that bad, but they had a bad day, you know. But we label people. We are doing that now with this illegal immigration. We are doing that between the race relations, black and white. You know, I obviously, there are white people who hate black people, and they label them, and they say, oh, all black people are lazy, and all Mexicans are dirty. And then on the other hand, all white people are arrogant and stuck up. You know what I mean? And I mean, we just tend to do that to other nationalities and to other tribes. And they are maybe a little, all the Jews are cheap, right? I mean, you heard that. I know that I'm not politically correct, but what the heck? You know, don't label me. But we should not label people. You know, there are Jewish people who are more generous than any one of us. And there are Mexican people who are cleaner than any white person you will ever meet. And there are African Americans who are more hardworking than anybody that you will ever know. You cannot generalize. You cannot label people. When you do that, you're ruining your own future because you're limiting who you're going to hang around with. You're limiting who you're going to do business with. You're limiting yourself, your own potential. So why label people? The Bible clearly says, and that's what Jesus said, I mean, do not judge. Do not condemn. If you do, you will be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. There is no male or female. There is no Jew or Gentile. That's the Bible way. We're all the same. On this planet, we're all the same. We all belong to one Father. Every single one of us. And you start labeling people, the only person you're ruining is yourself. You're ruining your own future. Fortune telling, number 8, I won't succeed. In other words, you're playing God. You know, this will not work. And the story that I used from the Bible is Jonah. I mean, you remember the story of Jonah. He was sent to Nineveh to preach the message of repentance to them, right? And he didn't want to go. And finally he went and he preached, and they all repented, and God spared them. And what does he say to God? I mean, in Jonah 4, chapter 4, I love that chapter. I know that you're gracious and compassionate God, slow to anger and abounding in love, a God who relents from sending calamity. Now, Lord, take away my life, for it is better for me to die than to live. In other words, when God came to him and told him, go and preach, he already decided how this is going to end, right? He knew better than God what the future is going to be like. And sometimes you say to yourself, oh, this will never work, so you don't even try. Sometimes you say to yourself, I will never succeed in this, and you don't even try. I got kicked out of high school, Mount Steuben High School in Chicago. They just told me not to come back, you know, because I just ditched school all the time. You know, I was 16, 17 years old. And the time came after that, you know, when I realized I don't want to work. I want to study. Because working ain't going to do nothing for me. It's just going to kill me early. And I had a choice. I had to take the GED test. And the GED test back then in Chicago, you had to go in the morning at 8 and you were done at 3, and you were tested in 5 major subjects of high school. And basically in one day you had to pass all of your high school requirements. You were tested on mathematics, on English, and my English still isn't that good. Back then it was a lot worse, you know. And you had to be tested on all of the major subjects of high school in one day. And you know, the first thing that came into my mind, I can't do this. There's no way. How am I going to pass this test? I don't know this stuff. I never went to school. I ditched. I went to the movies. If they asked me about Bruce Lee movies and karate and kung fu, I could tell you about that, but I couldn't tell you about mathematics and American history and who was the president back in, you know, 18. I had no clue. Civil War, none of that stuff. And the first thing I said to myself, I can't do this. What was I doing? I was fortune telling, right? I was predicting my own future. Luckily I had a teacher back in high school who at one time told me, Anik, you can do anything you want. And when all of those doubts came into my mind that I couldn't do this, I remembered what this guy said, Dr. Schwartz, Jewish guy. I remembered it. That all of a sudden, but like a miracle, those words came into my head. I heard him again say that, and this is now 3 or 4 years later, after the fact. I heard him say that, and it was in my head. And I heard him say, Anik, you can do anything you want in life. And I said, you know what? I'm going to give it a shot. And I went and I got all the books and I studied for weeks. And then I got tired of studying. I really did. I didn't want to study anymore. And I said, I'm going to go give it a shot. And I went in and I just passed. I didn't get when I said just passed, I meant I just passed. And I tell you, that little diploma means a lot to me because it helped me realize that you can do anything you want. You shouldn't try to predict your future, especially in the negative way. You should never say to yourself, I cannot do this. This is not for me. This is not going to work out. When you say that, if I given up back then, I would have still been driving a truck or a school bus somewhere in the suburbs of Chicago. If I didn't take that one step, that's what I'd still be doing. Maybe I would have a better job, than that at one point. But what kind of future would there be for me? So sometimes you have to stop fortune telling, and if you're one of those people that's doing that in your own life like Jonah did, then stop it. Because God is bigger than that. God had a plan for Jonah. God had a plan for Pastor Gordon. God has a plan for you guys. But He wants you to think right if those plans are going to work out. If you think right, your future is good. If you think bad, if your thinking is not right, then you got no future. 2 more points. The world does not revolve around you. Don't take it personally. Right? When you do that, you don't have any future. Why? Because everything that somebody does to you, you take personally. Oh, they must hate me. They must not like me. They're out there to destroy me. And maybe they're not even thinking about you. Maybe you're not even on their radar screen. And we take things personally. And I think that's a sign of, maybe self-centeredness a little bit. James 3:16 says, for where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there will be disorder and every vile practice. Selfish ambition, self-centeredness is when you personalize everything that happens to you. Just because I walked by you today and maybe didn't say hi, does not mean that I don't like you. Maybe it means that I was running to talk to Milos or somebody. Just because somebody did something to you at work or at school or at home, this happens between wives and husbands, that don't mean they want to get a divorce right away. Maybe they just had their mind on something else. Don't take things personally. This is about thinking. How do you think? If you think like this, then you don't have a future because everything is going to affect you. Every little thing is going to wear you down. There was a book written not too long ago. What was the name of it? Don't sweat the small things, right? Wasn't that it? Don't sweat the small things. Don't take everything personally. And last one is unreal ideal, having unreal expectations. You look at somebody else, you look at LeBron James, and you think you ought to be him. And you're 5'3". It's not going to happen. You look at your neighbor and you say, he has a Mercedes-Benz, I should have a Mercedes-Benz. Don't compare yourself to other people. Don't look at other people and then say, I should have what they have, or I should have more than what they have, or I should achieve more than they have achieved. Once you start thinking about it, you're dealing your reality is completely messed up. Be who you are. Be happy with what you have. Look at this verse. I love this verse. James 4, 1-3. What causes quarrels and what causes fights among you? He's asking a question. Is it not this, that your passions are at war within you? You desire and do not have. So what do? So you murder. You desire. I want to have what this other person has. I'm not going to be happy until I have a Mercedes-Benz. I'm not going to be happy until I do better than my neighbor does. You desire, you don't have, so what do? You murder. You covet and cannot obtain, so you fight and quarrel. And then look at this. This is very telling. I want you to remember this. You do not have because you do not ask. And then you ask and do not receive. Why? Because you ask wrongly to spend on your own passions. In other words, sometimes we ask God for things that we are going to use to prop up self, that we are going to use to brag, that we are going to use to put somebody else down, to compare to ourselves to somebody else. If you think that way, if you're always comparing yourself to others, if you're always wanting something from God so that you can surpass the others and be better than them, then your future is not going to be good. Got to ask for the right reasons. Got to ask because you want God in your life. Not because of the things that He's giving you, but because of the presence, His presence in your life. The greatest gift that you can have as a Christian in your life is not the money, it's not the long life, it's not the health, it's not anything that you can list. The greatest gift that you can have as a Christian is having God present in your life. And I tell you, there are people who would trade the riches of the world to have 1 minute with Jesus so that their sins could be forgiven and that they could receive the eternal life. God bless you. I believe that regardless of what's going to happen on this planet here in the next weeks and months, that we have the future as Christians. Just like Israelites did, because we have God on our side. God bless you as you think, take this home. Think about your own thinking and how does it match against this list. And you know what? Change your thinking, change your future. I'll see you next Sabbath. Jim?